I'm pretty much the poster child for don't go to the grocery store when you're hungry, and don't go without a list. Uh, Debbie rarely sends me to the grocery store because I just have this, I don't know, gift for bringing back more than what I was sent to bring back, and even sometimes stuff other than what I was sent to bring back. A list is pretty important for guys like me when it's time to go to the grocery store. And there are other lists that are equally important, maybe even more important than a grocery list. One of the places one of those lists appears is in the book of Galatians, where the Apostle Paul writes the fruit of the Spirit, and then he gives 9 qualities: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And then he says, against such things there is no law. These 9 character qualities, these 9 attributes of a life of significance are amazing, worthy objectives for every follower of Jesus. And then now Peter in 2 Peter chapter 1, beginning in verse 5, offers us another list. And as we go through it, you'll realize these are very compatible lists. They're not like here's one and here's another different one. They're very similar. Anyway, here we go, verse 5. For this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to goodness knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control perseverance, and to perseverance godliness, and to godliness mutual affection, and to mutual affection love. So we talked last time about faith and goodness, and let's go to the next 2 now. To your goodness, add knowledge. I've talked about knowledge a good bit. What Peter is referring to here is not just an accumulated database of information. It requires this accumulation of data, but it is on a deeper level, a more intimate, a more personal, and eventually a more practical level. There are all kinds of academic individuals who have lots of classroom experience and learning and letters behind their name. And I mean, they are very intellectually loaded down with all kinds of knowledge, who can hardly navigate from their home to Walmart and back. These stories of these people. That's not what Peter is talking about. The kind of knowledge Peter is talking about is this intimate, personal apprehension, not just of the data, but of its meaning and its application in life. And then he says, to knowledge add self-control. I've often thought how interesting you've got, okay, I get to your faith, add goodness, because if you can be very faithful, but you can get hooty, and you're not, your goodness kind of gets very far down the list of your priorities. And then it's about being right and faithful. And so it makes sense that goodness. And then if you're just good, but you're ignorant, that sets you up. So I get to goodness, add knowledge. To knowledge, add self-control. This is, to me, makes tons of sense. If you're a smart person and you don't have self-control, you'll be a smart person in the self-destruction mode. Isn't that the case? If you're very smart, if you're very knowledgeable, if your database of information is very broad and very deep, and yet you don't control yourself, it can hardly do you any good and probably won't do any of the people in your world, in your life, very much good. You see, self-control is one of the important and maybe, I don't know that I could say the most important, but easily one of the most important attributes that makes knowledge valuable. Because self-control is what decides what you will do about what you know. See, on a personal level, I know a good bit about what my body needs in terms of calories and the kinds of calories, the balance of a diet. I know with my type 2 diabetes, I know sugar, I have to avoid it. I know that carbohydrates, they're not necessarily my friend either because they convert to sugar so quickly in my system. I know that proteins are good, and yet there's a balance that has to be established. I know that green vegetables are very good for me. See, I know all these things. The key is, all right, so what am I doing about what I know? And that's the question with self-control. That's why add to your knowledge self-control. Okay, I'm throwing rocks in a lot of different directions here on this, but I'm going to go ahead. It sometimes concerns me that when I look around at the Christian world, I see so many people who are full of doctrinal information. They seem to have no lack of it, in fact, but they lack self-control. When was the last time you saw a fat preacher on stage, a clearly overweight, probably even unhealthily overweight preacher or teacher talking about self-control? I mean, that'd be a really difficult thing to do. Well, oh no, let me just say, it's not hard to do, but there ought to be a ping of conscience going for those of us who teach when our lives don't demonstrate the principles that we teach. I'm not saying you got to be perfect, and I'm not saying you can't way beyond, some certain number of pounds and still talk about self-control. See, you get the point. If knowledge is eclipsed by self-control, there's a disconnect. And this has to do with a couple of things. Number one, it has to do with the stewardship of our own life. If I am not stewarding through self-control my life, what I know, that's incongruent. That won't work, obviously. Second thing is, the example of my life will always carry more influence than the words I speak. And so if I talk about self-control, but I demonstrate the lack of it, what message does my life send? So to your knowledge, add self-control. While we're there, let's think about all of these things which were to add one to another. You sometimes add things accidentally. Never known anybody who accidentally added gas to the tank of their vehicle. I've never known anybody who accidentally added very many dollars into their bank account. I have known a few people that added value to relationships accidentally, but over time, that is a thing of diminishing returns, right? You add one thing to another through intentional effort by deciding to do so and doing things that will accomplish that. How do you add self-control to knowledge? You focus on your self-control. in partnership with Christ. See, none of these things that Peter urges us to add one to the other can be done well in our own energy, in our own strength and potential. They're possible and doable when we walk in partnership with the Holy Spirit. This is one of the reasons I think the list of the fruit of the Spirit and this list in 2 Peter are so compatible, because these things are not produced purely by our own effort. They're produced by cooperating with God's design and with His Spirit at work within us. So, okay, to your knowledge, add self-control. To self-control, perseverance. That's interesting. The most perseverant people that I've ever encountered in my life also had self-control. It's very difficult to be perseverant without self-control. Again, you know anybody who perseveres accidentally? No. You persevere because you have chosen to do this, and you do persevering things by choice. Perseverance. So what is perseverance? Well, it carries the idea of bearing up beneath a load. It's connected closely with patience, and yet it's really a step beyond mere patience. It is persevering is the ability, the activity that creates a situation where you endure, and to persevere almost always carries with it the idea of a stress against which you persevere, right? It's kind of like you have a force. There's this whole big deal about force field theory, and I'm not even going to get into that. But we persevere when we press against a force pressing against us. This could be through circumstances, it could be through ideas, it could be through other individuals. But to persevere means that we don't give up, we continue. Nobody runs a marathon that I've ever heard of, 26 miles and 2/10, without perseverance, without pressing through a variety of physical and mental thresholds. That's perseverance. That's not giving up. In our faith, in our walk with Christ, there are times when life is difficult, and sometimes it feels so difficult to us that it's very tempting to just say, you pull out the hanky, wave the white flag. I'm done. Okay, just back the truck over me and get this thing over. Especially when life is difficult, perseverance is so necessary. I won't even say just important. It's essential. All right, to your self-control, perseverance, as though, in a sense, I think the Holy Spirit through Peter is saying, okay, once you've focused on self-control, you need to direct it toward not giving up. Pause for application destination here. Is there anything in your life that you're struggling to not give up about? What about your walk with Christ? Or are there things that just seem too hard to keep pushing against, that you're ready just to say, whatever, okay, I can't do it? There's a whole lot about life that we are not capable of doing on our own. I'd say most everything, really, when you come down to it. Okay, grow in partnership with the work of God in your life, with His Holy Spirit. Grow some self-control, and then apply it to persevering. What is the area today that you most need to persevere in? why don't we just commit that to God and join Him consciously as He works it out in our lives? Add to your self-control perseverance. We'll pick it up next time from here on So Care with Stevie Boy.